LGBT, critical race theory, Black Lives Matter, like stuff like that, like those type of movements. Well, I mean, it's a book that we're going through, and sometimes I hear some of these people talk about like, well, if only Trump would come in, and you know what I mean. And I'm thinking and I tell Monica, it's like, I don't know if it's them trying to stop, like, uh, from things getting from worse to worse, but they're actually, that's like, it's not gonna happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, every attempt to fix it is only gonna make it. It's only gonna fulfill God's plan. Like, it's it. And so, when me and her talk about it, it's like, it's from the beginning. From the very beginning, there's an end to all this, right? So the book of Genesis tackles that, and we understand that this was all God's eternal plan from the very beginning, from Genesis, right? That God had planned this even before the world was. You read that in Revelations 13:8. In Acts chapter 2, 22-24, after Jesus ascends to heaven, you see Peter before the people, telling them, like, you planned this, not knowing that this was God's already preordained plan. Like, this was already God's plan. So from Genesis, right, from the very beginning of Genesis, something was already set in motion. Jesus, from the very beginning, was already part of that plan, right? So let's keep going. We're gonna get into certain genealogies. Some people ask, why doesn't the Bible talk about all the different families of the earth, right? Why does it only focus on Adam and Eve? Well, because it was through Adam and Eve that it was through that line that Jesus was going to come. Do you guys know from which of the sons of Adam and Eve Jesus was coming from?
David?
From Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve.
From Adam and Eve.
Adam and
I'm
Eve did
sorry.
not have David.
I'm sorry. Well, I mean, it had to.
Well,
have
so we
been.
know that Adam and Eve had, Adam and Eve had many other children. They didn't only have,
The ones that are
Yeah.
mentioned in the Bible.
right. So if we know that Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel, but Cain killed Abel. So from what son does the line of Jesus come from?
Candy cane.
Candy cane? Who said candy cane? Seth.
Seth.
Remember? After that.
After,
these-
yeah.
Oh, after.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's through Seth, right? So then the book of Genesis focuses on a lot of genealogies, right? But it focuses on one genealogy, one family. The family that was going to lead, all the way down to Abraham.
Mm-hmm.
You see, and even with Abraham, you see God's redemptive plan through Isaac, right? And how Abraham and Sarah kind of like try to do it on their own, through their own hands. Everything that you read from the book of Genesis, right? Everything that you see written in Scripture, like everything has a meaning. Like, it's just not there to be there, right? The Bible itself, in 2 Peter chapter 2:21 says that the Bible wasn't written by human will or human intellect. And what is it? 2 Timothy chapter 2. It talks about the scriptures being inspired by the Holy Spirit, inspired by God. So these people, that wrote the books of the Bible, a lot of them didn't know what they were writing. They didn't have that understanding, and even the angels told them, like, this is not for you to understand right now. This is for later time. So now you see in the New Testament, like Paul and John, where they start breaking down, everything that was written in the Old Testament. When Paul takes the gospel to the Bereans, what did the Bereans do? They went back to the Old Testament from the book of Genesis on to see if everything they were saying was going to check out. So you see from the very beginning, right, that there's this genealogy. You see when the son of Hezekiah fell into great sin, God told them, right, that the king from that line wasn't going to sit on there, right? And this is down David's family. But when you read the genealogy of Mary and Joseph, right? Mary comes directly from the line of David. So does Joseph, but through another son, through the son of Hezekiah, right? But you see that since Mary was conceived by the Holy Spirit, right? Well, that eliminates Joseph's
line.
Yeah.
Bloodline, right?
Yeah, that comes through Hezekiah. Only through
Mary's.
Mary's. You see? So when I was studying, like for this, there's a lot of things that I found out, like when it talks about in the book of Genesis chapter 2, when the serpent comes and tempts, which we're going to get into later, it talks about Mary's seed, through the seed, through Mary's seed. Well, women don't carry seeds. They carry eggs. Who carries seeds?
The men.
You see? So at that time, when you read it, you just gloss over it. You don't.
Yeah.
But then after a while, you're like, hey, wait a minute.
When you study it.
Yeah. When you study it, like, well, Mary cannot have seeds. Like, that's only man.
Mm-hmm.
But who provided the seed? God did.
God.
Through whom? The Holy Spirit. So, yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of things to the book of Genesis, and it's appropriate, right, that the book is called that the book of Genesis is that, the book of beginnings, because that's where we see the beginning of sin, and the beginning of redemption, where God introduces redemption, for humankind. So when the Bible talks about, as we get into like Genesis 1, when He created, the heavens and the earth, there is a gap between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, which a lot of people believe that there's a gap. Like they call it the gap theory. They believe that when Genesis 1 happened, right, the earth was already like formed, like everything was in there. And then, when we read in the book of Isaiah, right, about the fall of Satan, they believe that between Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, right, that's when Satan fell. So then how is the earth found in Genesis 2?
Timeline.
If we go on there, let's go to Genesis 1. Genesis 1. It says, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, right? So right there, they believe that was the beginning. Genesis 1 and 2 is giving you a quick outline, like real quick, right? And then in verse 2, the earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. So somewhere between 1 and 2, there's a lot of theories, and one of them is that between 1 and 2, something happened, and now again the earth is found formless and empty, right? And yesterday when I was here, I was talking to Alma, right? and I was telling her that you can get some spiritual sense, right, in in verse 2, right, because in a way before we come to God as Christians, when we're in our sin, that's the way God finds us, formless and empty, because we're without God, right? It takes the Spirit of God to hover over us, right? But as in the New Testament, indwells us for us to start producing life. You see, so you can see it in a spiritual sense there. That's the way we're found. We're as sinners, we're found formless and empty. It takes the Spirit of God to come upon us so that we can have life, right? So as we get into verses 3 and 4 and or verses 3 through 5, right, here we see the very beginning of light and darkness and the separation of them both, right? And in a sense, you can see where darkness, right, it's like a metaphor for chaos, a metaphor for sin, right? And it takes light, right, to be able to drive out the darkness, right? So it says in verse 3, then God said, let there be light, and there was light, and God saw the light was good. Then he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night, right? So here you see the very beginnings of the creation of the earth, right? And how God did that, right? A lot of people believe that in these theories, like the Big Bang theory, where something, me personally, like I've often like meditated on like not just here, like the earth, but you start thinking about like further out there in space, right? Like there's a star. I don't know if it's a sun. I guess it's called the sun, but it's called Beetlejuice. Am I right?
Never heard of it.
What?
Yeah.
A says yes.
Right. And how big is it, Papa?
It's the biggest star that we have found.
Like how many suns fit in it?
Too many.
Too many.
Yeah. But if you get further out there, so like there's no end to this.
Right.
I mean I've driven myself crazy like just thinking about it, like because you look at the sky and you know that it doesn't stop there.
Right.
Yeah.
And it goes further.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're like, man, like
Like
My question is, are we at the beginning or are we at the end?
well, I know as life we're at the end, but this is not the only galaxy. I mean, when you're a child, you don't think about that, but as you get older, things,
No.
Some
Yeah.
people think about that.
the
Space Force, no?
the times when I used to go crazy was when like around the times when I used to do drugs and stuff,
Oh,
and
of course.
yeah.
You used to ponder life.
No, I would get anxiety, and I was like, you know what, you need to stop thinking about those things, 'cause, like, yeah. But in when people other than Christians read Genesis 1, through
It makes no sense to me.
no, it doesn't make any sense to them,
No.
because a lot of times even people who are so-called Christians, to not offend people, to not sound crazy, they try to eliminate God out of that first verse. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That there's an attempt to remove God from there. And so whenever you read Romans chapter 1 tells you right away the decline of the human mind. Right? Let's go to Romans 1 real quick. Romans chapter 1 verses 21 through 24.
So just to Romans 1:21. Just to go over that first verse, a lot of like people or theologians and stuff like that, they say, you know, that's the beginning of the Bible, and if you don't believe that first verse, then you know.
Why continue?
Yeah.
Exactly. If you don't believe 1:1 that God created the heaven and the earth.
Your initial faith begins right there. If you can believe that, if your mind like, yes, God created, okay, that's it. That sets you in motion. If you're the person who's like, I don't know, yeah, I don't know how. Like, I know that infinity exists, right? I know there's infinity. I cannot wrap my mind around infinity. Like,
Yeah.
so we all look forward. I mean, as Christians, we look forward for eternity, right? Now, I hope to pray that God takes away our strength, right, or something, right? Because how can you picture yourself living for eternity? Like, that's crazy. But that's what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen. We're gonna live for eternity. You know. So when I try to wrap my mind around, you know, like infinity, like I don't know infinity. Like I mean,
Yes.
I
Gives
know
you
infinity.
anxiety.
Yeah. But I know it exists. Okay, Romans chapter 1, verse 21 through 24.
Don't overthink it, babe.
Okay, not to, sorry. It says, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. You know, so then let me see.
And they began to think of foolish ideas of what God was like.
Hold on.
Yeah, that's where we get all those pictures of Jesus.
Yes. Let me see.
And we can also see it like at the beginning when Moses went up to the mountain and he never came down.
Oh yeah, and then
They started making that golden calf, and
so it says, so yes, they knew God, but they wouldn't worship him as God or even give him thanks. And they began to think of foolish ideas of what God was like. As a result, their minds became dark and confused. Claiming to be wise, they instead became utter fools. And instead of worshiping the glorious ever-living God, they worshipped idols made to look like mere people and birds and animals and reptiles. So then in verse 24 it says, so God abandoned them to do whatever shameful things their hearts desired. As a result, they did vile and degrading things with each other's body. But that's what happened. You know, here God gives them creation for you to see. You know, sometimes you wonder, like, I mean, we've never traveled too far, like out of tech. Well, yeah, you know, when we visited Caleb in Missouri, right? But some of the landscape out there, man, it is
beautiful.
beautiful. And I've never been out of out of the United States, other than Mexico, right? But people who go to like Hawaii or like these, yeah, and it's like you wonder, you know. But like, how does God hang the earth, right? Perfect, you know, like it there's a perfect balance within, you know, within the earth that it allows to give life. How come there isn't another planet that can do that? If there is, I don't, you know, I know that you hear about scientists trying to like find, you know, go further and further and further to find something, right? But even at that attempt, here you see them trying to ignore what they already possess. Yeah, what they already have.
Yeah.
You see, so they're trying to find, like, it's like there's,
They're trying to find a meaning for.
yeah. So already, like, they're not satisfied with God and what they've given them. No, they're trying to.
A scientific reason why things are the way they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to figure them out.
Yeah, and because of that, I mean, God already knows the thoughts of men, you know, and that's the reason why, like, when we read there in Romans chapter 1, he abandoned them. Like, go do whatever you want to do. You know, there's a time where God's gonna call, you know, everything into question. You know, it's gonna, you know, when we stand before Him. You know, and at that point, you know, they're gonna have added with Him. You know, so
Yep.
trying to eliminate God, right, from the Bible, you're gonna run into a big,
Yeah.
just trying to eliminate God, period. And you see it right now. You see it. That class that I was talking about, that's what they get into. You know, trying to shut out God, right? And then the problems that it's creating. You see what I mean? Like, and so you see that not only from right now, but even from, like, you know, a little bit further into Genesis already. You see the
Decline.
attempt, the attempt and the decline, the attempt to remove God and the decline that happens. I mean, you see it within Israel.
Adam and Eve, right?
Yeah, with Adam and Eve. You know, so right away, like, as we get into, you know, when we start reading about the serpent, you see how crafty it was to try to,
Yeah.
like, mix around what God,
Manipulate.
yeah,
Yeah.
and mix around what God said too. You know, like,
Yeah.
you see the first lie right there. You'll see the first lie.
Yeah.
You know, where, you know, even her, in trying to explain what God said, she lies about what God said.
She
You know, so
minces the words.
she minces the words. You know, she didn't have to say that, but she did. You know, so you know, I've had you know, when the kids were smaller, they used to always, you know, I don't know if they remember, but they would ask me, like, where God came from. No, well, God always existed.
That's my answer.
Yeah.
God always existed. You know, Jael especially, you know.
Oh, yeah.
She's
It's always asking.
yeah, always asking, you know, and it's like, I know they would ask me too, you know, but I would give them the same answer. Like, you know, He's always existed.
Nobody made him.
Yeah, nobody made Him.
He's
you know,
always been. There's no time. There's no.
nothing.
No.
Yeah.
He's
You know-
just infinity.
So when we start getting further into Jesus, right? Jesus in the flesh, yes, but Jesus Himself, he didn't have. He wasn't a created being,
He's
like
eternal.
like some Mormons believe. You know, like some Jehovah's Witnesses believe. He wasn't a created being. You know, Mormons believe that Jesus was the brother of Satan. You see what I mean?
Did you know that? Mormons believe that Jesus was the brother of
What did
Satan.
they use to justify that?
Bible?
The
Yeah,
Bible?
the Bible. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
I didn't know
yeah. But they use certain verses
that. Stories or yeah.
and they just mix it around.
Yeah.
You know, there's a, you know, so it's gotten to the point where they've created their own, like their own commentary, and so, like, they won't give you the Bible, they'll give you their book. No, read our
Their
book.
doctrine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this will explain what the Bible says.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but you know, I've ran into them here. You know, there was one time when we used to live on what was it? Where was it? Behind Carquest.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to live behind Carquest.
On
and-
Roosevelt.
Roosevelt. And you know, I got into an argument. It was a little kid. I mean, it was like, I don't know, like 20 years old. So what does he do? He brings in another.
The big guy.
Yeah,
With the bigger bike.
yeah, yeah.
That's right.
You know, so then they start getting into like the 144,000. Have you ever heard about that?
In the Revelation.
Yeah, 144,000. And he was like, you know, you need to make plans. You need to make plans. You know, because only 144,000 are gonna make it into heaven. And I'm like,
Can you imagine?
Okay,
144,000.
he's like, show me the verse. Show me the verse.
I'm done.
And they showed it to me, but they didn't show it to me. They didn't show it to me fully.
Yeah.
You know, so then I took out the Bible and I showed it. You know, where it says that the 144,000 were going to be made out of 12,000 of each. Actually, towards the tribulation or into the tribulation, Jesus or God, right? He's gonna bring about 144,000 or 12,000 of each of the tribe of Israel, men, pure, undefiled, meaning that, you know, they never had any sexual contact or anything like that. and those are the Jews that he's going to use to evangelize to the rest of the nation of Israel. You see what I mean? But the way the guy described it to me was like,
Yeah.
The way they understand it.
yes, yeah. The way they interpret is that
Yeah.
only 144,000
That's it.
were
So
gonna
not even half of their religion is gonna make it
Yeah.
because
How?
there's so many out there.
Think about it. They've been around since
It's a small
like
crew.
they've been around since I don't know when, you know. And you're telling me that you've only had 144,000 members? No, it's crazy. Like, anyways, but you see that you see it from the beginning, right? This misinterpretation of who God is, and you see it now. It still goes on. I mean, that it hasn't stopped, you know. So when in the first verse, when it says in the beginning, we try to understand that the whole world, the whole universe, it wasn't by like accident. Like it wasn't by accident. You know, even though scientists will try to create ways to like, it wasn't. You know, it didn't just happen. Another thing, right? You have certain people. Have you ever heard of young Earth? The young Earth theory.
Yeah.
You heard of it? What is it, Papa?
It's when people believe that the Earth is only like 2,000 or 4,000 years old.
Like anywhere between 7,000 to 10,000 years old, right? Now the pastor that we used to listen to, Chuck Smith, right? He makes this funny thing like that when he was in school, right? Supposedly, supposedly the Earth was what 200 million years old,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
When he was in elementary school. So then something like that, and then when he graduated, all of a sudden it was 300 million years old, or like something like that.
something.
So by the time he by now by his time when he was
Old.
old that it was already like 300 million years old. He goes, I know I haven't been around that long. You get it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, whether it was, maybe it was. I mean, who knows? But for a
They keep
fact,
finding things that are older and
Yeah.
older and
Yeah.
older.
but for a fact, human beings only go back so far.
Yeah.
Like they don't go that far back.
Yeah.
They only go like as far as like 7 to 10,000 years back. I mean, if you start reading like
History.
yeah, if you read like people that study fossils and stuff like that and what they found, they've never found anybody older than I don't know than 10,000. But we know for a fact that when you read the lineage between Adam till now, it's anywhere between I don't know 7 to 8,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's stuff for you to think about, only because you're gonna have people depending on the circle you hang around with or whatever. You'll come across people who are atheists, people who don't believe in God, people that are like agnostics, right?
And people that just like to fight against
Yeah.
what you believe.
I mean, I have it there at work.
Yeah. And the thing is that, like with evolution, people will come against you and tell you, no. In school we were taught about evolution. And evolution basically it's the earth was here and, all of a sudden these little creatures in the sea started,
Walking.
they started clumping to each other and they started growing legs and, tails, and we came out of the ocean somehow. It evolved into a person. And the thing is that, just like they question the word of God, a lot of Christians have questioned it. Okay, well then why is it that we're not evolving still? Why is it that, we don't see human beings all of a sudden come out of the forest where there's monkeys?
Yeah.
Why is it that we don't see that? And then with the Big Bang Theory, the same thing. How can you as a scientist tell me that all of this was a big old explosion and all of the
Accident.
planets,
Yeah.
it was an
Accident,
accident,
yeah.
and then all of the planets fell into place. The sun was in the middle. You know, if the earth was any bit closer to the sun, we'd be
Yeah.
burning up, and if it was any bit farther from the sun, we'd be freezing.
Yeah.
So you know,
there's a perfect like you can see a design. You can see that someone designed something perfect that hangs in a perfect balance. You know, where you have the right amount of water, the right amount of land.
Air.
Yeah, you have something that coats the
Earth's
earth,
atmosphere.
not allow for the sun to penetrate too hard. That like you know, we're right there. You know, do we have hot summer days? Yeah. Do we sometimes experience summer during Christmas? Yeah. You know, but
That's all human.
yeah, that's
Human.
Yeah.
What humans have done to this
yeah.
world.
Yes.
Actually, there's some scientists had done a test on the I think the magnetic field of the Earth,
Oh,
right? And ever since then, they've been doing one every year for the last like
we're slowing down.
Yeah, it's getting worse and worse. Yeah.
not
you
the
know-
magnetic field, the ozone layer.
No, not the no.
That's another one.
That's another one. Yeah, no, that's another one. Yeah, yeah. It's something has to do with the magnetic field, and they see
The core.
a decline. Like,
The axis of the Earth.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, something
Yeah.
to that effect.
But if you
that's
read
what
it-
the magnetic does to it.
but if you read in Revelations, right, when it talks about the heavens, it's gonna fold up like a curtain. And during the tribulation, well, after once the earth is destroyed, before God introduces a new heaven and a new earth, that you read, right, that the heavens they fold up like a curtain, like a scroll, like just so something's gonna happen. We understand later on in Genesis when God destroys the earth by water, that He wouldn't do it like that anymore. But when John describes about what's happening towards the end of Revelation, there's fire, there's so I know as a Christian, like certain Christians will knock you will like knock on you because you believe in this, what is it called, the green earth thing, where it's a big thing right now.
Save the planet.
Yeah, save the planet, and they feel like
Ecosystem.
where everything's deteriorating and stuff like that. And you had one politician saying that in 10 years that the earth was going to end. Yeah.
Ice glaciers.
Yeah, but if you're as a Christian, like there's some Christians that if they hear you believe that, they'll tell you stuff. But it's spoken about in Revelations.
Yeah. It's coming. It's no
Yeah.
matter
Yes.
what you do. It was just.
You just have to be ready for
Yeah.
it. That's it.
Those are
you
just
know?
signs that they were posted for you to know. That.
Yeah. So we know that there is a designer. Us as Christians, we know who the designer is. We know that it's God. There's no, for us as Christians, we understand that that there is this spiritual being, this ultimate, we call him God because that's the way we know him, right? His name, I know that the Jews held it to such revere that they would eliminate vowels to not, they didn't even want to say the name. If you've ever, and you see some Christians now on Facebook, right?
Oh, yeah.
Take it a little bit further, like they'll put God, but they'll put God with an asterisk and then like G asterisk D. You never seen that? Yeah. Like it's not even his name, like, but that's just the way. Anyways, yeah. But even the way he designed us, the way God designed us, people are finding out that within our cell molecules that it's more complicated than people thought.
Right.
So you see, like even the way we're designed, like it's Only God could have done that.
Yes.
You know what I mean? That's what we as Christians need to understand. Yes, the outside world, people that don't believe in God, people that are atheists, no, they're gonna question everything. You know, I think because of things like that, where they don't value life, right, as much as we as Christians value life. You have this abortion thing going on. Like, you know what I mean? So let's continue reading.
Back to Genesis.
Genesis, yeah. Next time we'll find a babysitter. Just kidding.
Así estábamos, remember at the beginning with Avery and Chayo.
And they would come into the room, to the
Living room, running.
Okay. So then in Genesis chapter 1, verse 6 through 8, then God said, "Let there be space between the waters to separate the waters of the heavens from the waters of the earth." So we understand that there's waters separate, right, from the waters of the earth, and those are the waters that are held up above the earth, right, above the firmament. That's where we get like the rain clouds and stuff like that. God assembled the earth perfectly the way it needed to be. It says in verse 7, and that is what happened. God made this space to separate the waters from the earth, from the waters of the heavens. God called that space sky. And the evening passed and morning came, marking the second day. Then God said, "Let the waters beneath the sky flow together into one place, so dry ground may appear." And that is what happened. God called the dry ground land, and the water seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land sprout with vegetation, every sort of seed-bearing plant and trees that grow seed-bearing fruit. The seeds that will then produce the kinds of plants and trees from which they came." And that is what happened. The land produced vegetation, all sorts of seed-bearing plants, and trees with seed-bearing fruit. Their seeds produced plants and trees of the same kind, and God saw that it was good. Okay, so up until this point, we see not only the separation between the two waters, the heavens and the earth. We read in verse 8 that God called it sky. And then we start seeing the formation of plants, seeds, plant seeds, fruit trees, vegetation, and stuff like that. So here you see God already forming what we already see now. Like apple trees. It's crazy because when you read in the New Testament, when it talks about a good tree cannot produce bad fruit, and same thing. Like, it's hard for you. Well, okay, so an orange tree cannot produce apples, right? Nor can pickles, cucumbers give you watermelons. Like, no. But I'll tell you one thing. My brother one time planted what was it? No. He used some fertilizer, what it was, like Miracle Grow on his lemons, but that belonged to orange trees. So then all of a sudden the lemon started tasting kind of like, what was it? Like bittersweet?
Yeah.
That was crazy.
It was.
It was, right? Yeah. So but yes, you cannot. Yeah.
Yeah, man, and again, man interferes.
Man interfering. But he did. I don't know how he did it. He didn't do it on purpose. He was just trying to the tree was dying. The lemon tree was dying.
Y le puso
Oranges.
the vitamins that he put on the tree were for
Citrus.
for citrus.
Yeah. So then the lemon started
tasting. Yeah, I think he made them taste almost like valley lemons and.
Oh yeah, maybe like
Yeah.
lemons.
Sí, porque
Yeah,
ya no
so-
estaban agrios.
But yes, I mean, but the way God created things, yeah, you cannot get.
Yeah, and you can see it here the way that his way of thinking. Because first of all, on the first day he couldn't have created the vegetation because then how was it going to survive?
Yeah.
You know, so on the first day, you know, he did the light and the day. You know, the light and the darkness.
Everything
he
was
separated
proper
it.
order.
You know, and then the second day was the waters. You know, and he separated them. And then the third day was the land and the sea, and then he brought in the vegetation. So, you know, he put everything in its place, everything in order. You know, because
Before us.
Before us.
Before us,
Before
yeah.
us. Yeah. So then, did I read verse 13?
and everything passed and morning came, marking
Okay.
the third
Marking
day.
the third day. So we're already on the third day of creation, right?
Wednesday.
Yes, there you go.
It is Wednesday. Hump day. So then God said, "Let lights appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them be signs to mark the seasons, days, and years." So already we're getting the introduction of night and day, days, seasons. You know, I
He
don't
left
know.
Texas out of seasons, I think.
I don't know. I
Get
really
somewhere
don't.
like all year long.
Remember, the Bible says this, right? That to God, one day is like
1,000.
1,000. Okay, hold on.
To God, no, to God it's one day.
Yeah.
What happened?
I got a
Cramp.
cramp. Sorry. Yeah. So to God, one day is like 1,000, or like
1,000 days
years,
is one day to him.
or 1,000 years, no? 1,000 years is like a day to God, right? But God does have the power to, create something in one day. Like He has that power.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? He does have that power. I mean, the Bible, when you read about His attributes, He's all powerful. So He could have done it in one day, but if it says here that He did this in one day, well, then He did it in one day.
Yes.
So 7 days could mean 7,000 years?
It could mean.
It
You know
could
what I mean?
mean, yeah, because I mean,
That's a...
the people that argue,
Yeah.
they get that from that because He
Yeah.
said it. I mean, it's in Scripture, so now they're gonna get it from there. But again, it could be that He did that in one day.
But
You know?
in the end, to me, it doesn't really...
It doesn't really matter. Yeah.
What matters that he did it,
That's
one,
right.
you know?
And one of the Bible,
That's the
one of
point.
the theologians said that, like, it really doesn't matter. Like,
It doesn't.
you can use a little imagination to, So then it goes on to say, let these lights in the sky shine down on earth, and this is what happened. God is not trying to prove, or like the book of Genesis is not trying to prove God or the existence of God. You know what I mean? This is everything is being done just the way God said. God is making it done. Genesis is not trying to prove the existence of God. That's why we said that if you believe in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning was God. That's all you need. For your faith. In verse 16, God made two great lights, right? The larger one to govern the day, and the smaller one to govern the night. He also made the stars, right? Verse 17, God set these lights in the sky to light the earth. In verse 18, to govern the day and night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. Again, you see the separation between light and darkness. No matter how dark, right? You see, like the sky, or you look, you can always see light. It doesn't. The darkness doesn't stop the light. And you can see this from the beginning, just from the writings of Genesis. And it's something that when you look at it as far as Jesus Christ, right? When He comes into somebody's life, nobody's too dark. There's no darkness in an individual that cannot be saved. You know, there's no sin that God cannot conquer. Like, there isn't. You know, either the person willingly decides not to,
Follow.
follow
We believe.
or believe. Yeah, like there isn't, and you see it just in here in Genesis. You know, where there's light, darkness has to move out of the way, right?
And darkness is basically just the absence
The absence of light.
of light.
You know, so a person who is in sin, right, is actually a person who's absent
God is absent from.
in his life. Yeah, I mean that's basically what it is. It says in verse 19, and evening passed and morning came, marking the fourth day. Verse 20, then God said, let the waters swarm with fish and other life. Let the skies be filled with the birds of every kind. So God created the sea creatures and every living creature that scurries and swarms in the water, and every sort of bird, each producing offspring of the same kind, and God saw that it was good. Verse 22, then God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply. Let the fish fill the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth. He basically commanded,
That's right.
the animals of the that walked upon the earth, and not only on the earth but in the seas, to do the same thing as he did us. Be fruitful and multiply. And like Paul said, Paul, not the Apostle Paul. It's amazing how he did all of this before he introduces man. He wanted to set man, where he wouldn't lack anything. So he did all this. He did all this even before he introduces man.
It says, that's what I noticed right now. It says, created creatures before you created humans.
Yeah.
And that's been proven.
Yeah, and that's been proven. Yeah. So then it says in verse 23, and evening passed and morning came, marking the fifth day. So already we have the fourth day and the fifth day, right? Then God said, let the earth produce every sort of animal, each producing offspring of the same kind, livestock, small animals that scurry along the ground, and wild animals. And that is what happened. God made all sorts of wild animals, livestock and small animals, each able to produce offspring of the same kind, and God saw that it was good. Right? So we have this up until the fifth day, right? So God puts animals on the earth, right, before he puts man, or he introduces man onto the earth. So then in verse 26 it says, then God said, let us make human beings in our image to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, all the wild animals on the earth, and small animals that scurry along the ground. Already in verse 26, you see the very beginning of the Trinitarian concept.
The Trinity.
The Trinity.
God the Father and the Son.
Yeah, because you have to ask yourself, who is he speaking to up there? We're not created in the image of the angels, right? And another thing, when God created us, he created us with free will, the will to choose. When you read Romans 9 and you read how Paul is talking about how God made some vessels for good and some vessels for destruction, right? He brings up the question that a lot of people might ask, like, well, then why did you create me? Like, why do you punish me? If you created me like this, why do you punish me? And Paul says, who are you to question God? God can do whatever he wants, which is true. God can do whatever he wants. Which means that God can create a creature, right? Or people with their own free will, with their own free thoughts to choose. You know, he gives you he gives you the ability to choose whether or not to choose him. You know, which when we get into you know, Adam and Eve being in the Garden of Eden, you're gonna see that.
Oh, they're late, babe.
Who is it?
I don't know. You have to start from the beginning. Start from the beginning, babe.
Oh. Is it Crystal? Hi, Lacta. Tienes, Alexa?
Was somebody gonna pick up Jaden?
Yeah.
Your brother-in-law coming?
Okay. Should I wait or?
No, you can continue.
For what?
Okay, we'll continue. Yeah, so this is where you see the introduction of the concept of the Trinity. You know, we have to understand this. Then when God made man, right, in His image or in our image, you know, referring to the Trinity, He also made us with how do you say it, like with this expression, like with the ability to be what He is, not as God, but you know, a loving individual, you know, because of His attributes. There are certain attributes that don't transfer from God to us, but there are some attributes that do transfer to us, like love, patience, you know, you know, those kind of attributes. Now, omnipotence.
Yeah, we can't be all over the place.
It can't be omniscient. It can't be.
We know it all.
Powerful. Yeah.
Well, we can act
Some
like
of us act like we know it, you know. But one thing that we have to also, and this is where, like, when we go back to like Romans 1, right, when it talks about how people, instead of worshiping the Creator, they worship creation. One thing that we need to understand is that God did not make us the same as He made the animals. You know, He did not put Himself, His Spirit, into the animals. You know, He did not make animals with souls or anything like that. You know, He didn't. You know, now does the Bible talk about, you know, animals being in heaven? Yeah, I mean, it says there that the sheep would lie with the lion, and you know, but I mean, I don't know how they're gonna get in.
I don't know how they're getting in.
Yeah, but I mean, that's one thing that we need to understand, that
Yes, that's right.
that He did not make us the same. Like we're separate, but you do have some people that will hold an animal at a higher value than a human being. I mean that's why, you know, again, does that mean that we're gonna mistreat animals? You know, because we feel inferior? You know, like, no. You know, in the book of Proverbs, it talks about that a man who is, you know, good, or a person who's good to animals, that person, you know, God considers them righteous. You know, I've told Monica many times, like, just because I don't like you know,
You don't like
I
animals?
don't like Oreo.
My
Yeah,
dog.
At the same time, I'm not gonna be mean to it. You know what I mean? No,
He's me too.
no.
He is, right,
Yeah.
guys?
You throw him outside every day.
No.
You like my
But no, just because of that. But it's, but that's the thing. Like, you know, like we need to make a distinction. You know, that we're not the same as animals. You know, does it mean that we mistreat animals? No. You know, we need to understand that from the very beginning. You know, it's like, have you ever seen? You know?
Your tia brought you. Are you kidding me?
Oh my
Jael.
gosh.
So bad.
Jeez. All right.
Go on.
Go on. So in verse 26, right? When God says, when God says, let us make human beings in our image to be like us, he put kind of like a homing device, so to speak, into humans to guide us back to Him, to have that ability. So what happens is that He puts it in us to search for Him.
Love.
Yeah. But what happens is that some of us go, to other things. You know what I mean?
That void is there, but
Yeah. There's a void. There's
you seek it somewhere else.
You remember the story, of the woman at the well? When God confronts, Jesus confronts the woman, and He tells her, like, the water that I give, once you drink from this water, you're not gonna thirst anymore. Well, her issue was finding comfort in other men, to the point where, like, she couldn't be by herself.
She wasn't doing so.
But she was trying to fill a void. But instead of her, like, looking for God or looking for Christ, she was looking that need for love.
Yeah.
And a lot of us do that with animals, with vehicles, like whatever, but we do that, and you see a person who's like,
And they're never happy
and they're never happy.
because they're always searching. Like,
I mean, it happens to both men and women. Like, I mean, but I do believe that from the very beginning, God did put something in us to draw us back to Him. But He also gave us free will. Because He's a free willing God. He's not gonna force you to worship Him. He's not gonna force you to love Him. Remember, the Word of God says this, that we love, why?
Because He loved us.
First.
Because He first.
So from the very beginning, he put that in us. It's just like a parent. As a parent, we do everything to teach our children
To be recognized, to know that
Yeah.
they're gonna seek for you
Yeah.
one way or another.
but somehow, some way they'll, and even in life, you try to direct them down the right path. You do the best that you can, but that there comes this point, which a lot of Christians like to call the age of accountability, where at that point that's it. There's nothing you can do. Okay, so this man asked this one theologian, right? And he asked him, if, let's say that, I don't know Monica, right? I'm a Christian. No, this is pretend. I'm a Christian, and I don't tell her about the gospel, right? Like, I mean, I'm sitting here, I'm eating lunch with her, whatever, and I don't speak to her about God. I get up and I move, and lightning strikes her, she dies right there. Am I responsible for her death? Like, am I responsible for not telling her the gospel?
Yeah.
And the question is no.
Unless you feel responsible.
If you feel responsible, that's different, But it's her responsibility to look for God. Now, there's many people that she came across before she sat down there to eat with me. Those people could have, but really, it's up to them.
yeah.
The responsibility. A lot of people get weighed down like that. Like, look, I had a friend of mine, and I was already a Christian. Se llamaba Raymond Garza, and he was shot and killed over here in by Vermeer Park. And for a long time, like, I knew this kid. I grew up with him, right? And for a long time, I felt that guilt. Like, man, I never got to spoke. I never really spoke to him about Christ. So, as a friend, it weighed me down. And then later on, like, no, like, there was a lot of people in his life, and not only that, but he himself. So it's not for you to take on that guilt, because it's really the person. The person has to look for God. Man, you could be that's one of the things that bothers me, because I've heard some messages, right, where they'll say, if the parent would be come to church every single day, whatever, worshiping, their family wouldn't be what they are. Man, I've seen parents that are like, committed churchgoers, and their kids are like, you can't blame the parent. Like, the parent can only do so much, so, yeah,
Everyone
God
does for themselves.
Yeah.
You do what you do what you can to a certain age, and then it's up to them.
It's up to them.
It's up to
I
them.
mean, I've always told my children, like, that's my main thing. Like,
Teach them and they want.
I was like, you know what? You can go to college, study for whatever you want to study for. If you want to be a janitor,
That's what he would tell Caleb.
Sanitation engineer.
Sanitation engineer.
go ahead and do that. But my thing is, don't leave God.
Yeah.
Don't leave God, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you make.
Yeah.
If you leave this earth without having God in your heart, or without believing in Him, or living for Him, you worked for nothing.
Yeah.
Everything was in vain, and now you're gonna go and suffer, eternity. So that's the thing that, and I tell them all the time, even up until now, Benny calls us, and that's what we're preaching to him, and it's like, at a certain age, it's their responsibility, and like I tell the people that I also counsel before I marry them, I tell the man, because the man is the head of the household, and I said, you will be held accountable for your family. God will ask you, why didn't you lead your family? He'll ask you, but are you going to be responsible for them? No, because, they have to make their own choice.
And God will do it. I mean, look, is God going to bring everything up to you? Yes, but God is a fair God.
Yeah.
And from the moment that you turn around, He counts that.
Yeah.
It's not like if nah. No, yeah, eso ya no cuenta. Like, no, that's not. God is a fair God.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't do that to where, like, like He's gonna hold you accountable for your past. What did He say about sin? That when you come back to when you turn to Him, what did He do to your sin? Throws it to the deepest part of the ocean.
Yeah.
Why is He gonna bring it back up? Like, no. So,
He's not us.
No, He's not us. Like that Facebook thing. Us. Anyways. No. So like in verse 26, you see that, right? Verse 26, when God created human beings, He created them in His image, right? In His likeness. In other translations, it says in His likeness, right? And that's what it means. He means that He created us with His with his emotions, you know what I mean, with His thoughts, the way He's thinking, but also, again, like I said earlier, here you see the introduction of the Trinity right there. Even though people like to say, like, no, it's not, no, this is the introduction to the Trinity right here from the very beginning. Okay. Verse 27. So God created human being in His own image. In the image of God, He created them. Male and female, He created them. You see all these things going on with, transgenderism and, kids being confused. There's kids in school, supposedly, I've read, I think Monica told me, where they'll ask the kid, like,
What are you?
what are you? Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
Not who do you think you are, like, hey,
Yeah,
who do you
like
think you
what
are?
do,
No,
like
who do you
little
think-
kids, like in kinder and first grade, they're asking them, like, how do you feel, like, who do you think you are, like, and stuff like that. And if the little boy says, well, I feel that I'm a girl, they'll start calling the little boy like she and stuff like that, without even telling the parents that they're doing this.
And they're and
Yeah, it's crazy.
some I'll call them wishy-washy Christians, right? Are making an attempt that when you read through Genesis, you don't read that. exclude that, like take that out of the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, you can't.
You know what I mean? Where it says, in male and female, he created them, like
No, don't
both
say that.
both individuals. So they don't want to read that part. You know, so I mean, again, you see people trying to distort the word of God to fit what?
Their agenda,
Their
their
agenda.
lifestyle.
You know, this is the thing. The sad thing about it is this, that you see it from the world, right? I get it from the world. I get it because I mean they're I don't mean it in a bad way, but they're ignorant. They don't understand. Like their minds are confused. You know. But when I see it from Christians, that's where like.
I mean, that's like, that must be tough, because
Those,
like as parents, because you teach them
Yeah.
the church and the right way, and then
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you are teaching them the right way, and I mean, if we're living by what the Word of God says, you teach them at a young age, so that once they get older, they don't depart from the Word of God. Well, then at that point, God is honoring what you're teaching. Yeah. So, like I asked Azarias when all of this, because you see, like the stuff that we're studying at that church right now. It's all like the secular stuff that's going on, like with the transgenderism and all that stuff. And like all of this stuff, I know little bits and pieces because I hear, I have my radio right here.
nada más estoy tengo CNN.
He'll
Fox.
explain a lot of little things, political views and stuff like that. I don't get into any of that. And a lot of us Christians are blind to all of that, So, when people come and tell us stuff, a lot of the times we're like, and sometimes we'll even go with the flow because, that's what they're telling us, right?
And that's the bad thing,
Yeah.
because again, and I'll go back to this verse, so God created human beings in His own image. In the image of God, God created them. This is not like, God left it up to people like, what do you want to be? No, God, this is the way God created
That's
human
right.
beings.
Who do you want to be?
Yeah, He created them man and female. A lot of the things that Jesus gets criticized for in the scripture is that Jesus never spoke about, or He never spoke against homosexuality. Right? But when the Pharisees are trying to trap Him on divorce, right, He quotes this verse.
Yeah.
In the beginning, God created man, humans, male and female. From the beginning, He created them like that. And then He reiterates the marriage part. With Adam and Eve, as we'll read further ahead, where the man shall leave. Woman will cleave to her husband and get away from mom and dad. Not paying attention.
No getting away from mom and dad.
Not yet.
I mean, but that's the
I
plan.
live
That's the plan. But
Hopefully.
yeah, and that's the thing, and that's the big thing right now that's going on. Again, like Monica was saying with that Bible study, the very first book has to do with all of that, and the way the pastor explains it is like these are things that we need to know, like because like you're sending off your kid to school and you think that you worry about tragedies like what happened at Uvalde and stuff like that, but then you also worried about them being confused.
Yeah, and what they're being taught.
Yeah, because a lot of this stuff,
I don't even think they teach evolution. Do they still teach evolution? Big Bang Theory?
the show.
I don't know.
She's been out of school
She
too
hasn't
long.
been
They teach evolution, but they rarely speak about Big Bang Theory. That's because I haven't had those classes.
I
know.
think ever since they introduced like the STAR test and the STAR exam, they got away.
They got away from all them.
You know what I mean? Because they started focusing on like competing with China and academic, yeah. But this is one thing that Jesus tried to emphasize in the New Testament. Even though people try to say like no, He never spoke against homosexuality. No, it's right here. Like
Yeah.
he quoted this verse for a reason. And right and God spoke through the Old Testament, right? About how he felt about homosexuality. I mean, for crying out loud, he destroyed the whole city,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Okay? And what does John 1:1 say? What does John 1:1 say? Anybody?
John 1:1.
God created, the Word was with God.
In the beginning was the Word, the Word was with God, and the Word
Was
The Word
God.
was God,
Or is God.
or is God. Meaning that Jesus is God. So, who's the book of Genesis talking about? Him. He's the one, and he's part of the Trinity when it's talking about here. Let us make human beings in our image. So how can you say that he doesn't speak about it if he took part in creation? You know, and the book of John, it says that nothing that was created without him. You know,
Yep.
and he created everything. So he's being given credit also. You know what I mean? So how can people say that he never spoke about it?
Yeah.
You know, these are things like when you're reading the book of Genesis and you like, you know, let's say you get to verse 26 and you see like, let us make, you know, humans in our image. When you see words like those pronouns, us, and it's like, hey, what's he talking about? So right there you start like, hey, this is the Trinity right here, right? So then when you go down to verse 27, you know, God created man, you know, in the image he created them, male and female, he created them. You're like, hey, wait a minute, it says it from here from the beginning. Like, what's the big confusion about?
Yeah.
You see what I mean? All right, let's keep going because ya se está acabando el tiempo. Then God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it, reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground. Here you see when, of course, when you read Genesis up until this point, right? Already God created man and woman, right? Verse chapter 2 will reiterate that again, but in more
Detail.
right? But you see that God gives man, right? And when I mean man, I don't mean just like the man. It's talking about man and woman. You know, it's a plurality of that covers, you know, everybody. You know, man and woman. But he gave them what? He gave them dominion over the earth, to take charge, to take care. You know, just like, you know, as a husband and wife, as a mother and father, you know, you're giving dominion over your children to govern them, not to overbear them, you know, but to govern them, to, you know, direct them right, you know. But he does that here, you know, he gives that power, if you want to call it, to man. Hey, I'm giving you the look. When I got hired with Sunrise Lending, and we set up Anvils, this oil rig thing. They installed the machines and stuff, and the owner, like the owner from Sunrise, like, hey, this is your baby now. Take care of it. So that means that anything that went wrong, who is it gonna fall on?
You.
On me. Okay, same thing with here. God is telling man, hey, you're in charge of this. Whatever you do will dictate what happens from here on out. Now remember, up until this point, we don't know, because it doesn't really say too much, right? But we don't know if all the animals were getting along. You know? Because like earlier I was watching what is it? Natural, or was it the Geographic Channel? Yeah, and I was seeing how, you know, animals were attacking each other and stuff like that, eating whatever, you know.
Like, was it like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, but you right here up until this point, you don't. It doesn't talk about that. Maybe because that wasn't happening yet. You know, how was God able to control the animals not to attack each other when He led them on to the
Ark.
yeah? How do you do that?
Right.
You would think that they would be, you know.
Yeah.
My opinion,
Okay.
I believe that here sin had not entered.
Okay. Yeah.
So they weren't attacking each other. But in the time of Noah, they were already eating each
Yeah.
other, but of course God
Sin was already introduced.
settled them.
I also
Down.
believe. Let me finish reading it. That way I can talk freely. And so it says here, and again, verse 30. And I have given them every green plant as food for all the wild animals, the birds in the sky, and the small animals that scurry along the ground. Everything that has life, and that is what happened. Then God looked over all He had made and saw that it was very good. And evening passed and morning came, marking the sixth day. Up until here, He hasn't rested. But anyways, getting back, to that, if you read very carefully, like let's say when you get into Genesis 2, I believe that God intended for us to be vegetarians.
Yep, that's what I read on verse 30. I have given every green plant as food, and then if you go all the way down, for everything that has life.
Yeah. So I believe that's, but
We should have been vegetarians.
That's what.
Yeah.
that's
Any
what I
doctor
believe.
you tell you that we're human bodies are not
Because
meant to eat
after Adam,
Meat.
meat.
yeah.
You know,
Look,
they
when-
taste great, but
when you've heard Pastor, right? Like when we get into like the ties and stuff like that, and like she talks about the law, and like, hey, we're supposed to follow the whole law, like whatever, right? As when the new covenant came in with Christ, the death of Christ and the resurrection, certain things like ceremonial laws we stopped following. Like that's why if you go back to Israel, like for whatever reason, after the death of Christ and the resurrection, they stopped sacrificing animals. They just stopped. They don't sacrifice animals anymore. But when you read it, restroom. Oh. But when you read
Tell them I'll send them the video later.
when you read what happens in Genesis 2, right? Adam and Eve try to cover themselves with leaves.
Yeah.
they were saying.
Well, yeah, they were ashamed, but they try to cover themselves with leaves. And God's like, no. Blood for blood.
Blood for blood.
Blood for blood.
Blood in, blood out.
Blood in, blood out. Nah, te quedas palo, te quedas palo. Okay, so we'll stop there. As the next week we'll get into Genesis 2. As I would encourage you guys, because we're going from Genesis, right? So just read Genesis chapter 2 and like
Maybe 3.
maybe 3.
Just to be on the
study
safe
it.
side.
Yeah.
If Ram doesn't talk so much. No, I'm just.
Yeah,
And-
there's a lot of places you can go to like study, like Bible Gateway and stuff like that.
And read 2 and 3, and if you have any questions, write them down.
Yeah.
I mean, whatever the question is, you know how they always teach you in school, there's no dumb question.
Actually there is. Like there
Oh
is.
my gosh, no, there's not. Unless it's irrelevant to what we're learning, then maybe. It's not dumb, it's just
Like that.
irrelevant.
Yeah. So did you stop it already?
Sorry.